Hey, hi everyone. I'm Patricia. I'm with Startup CPG, and we are here today with Nielson IQ for an incredible webinar about Innovate to Elevate. We are going to talk about first with Jordan for the snack category, and then, with Patrick. And then we are going to go with Jordan for the beverage category. I would love for Patrick, if you can start by introduce yourself, that would be great.
Definitely. It's great to meet everybody. Thank you for having us. My name is Patrick Doherty. I lead our grocery and center store vertical at Nielson IQ. And I also have my colleague Jordan here. I'll let you introduce yourself quickly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan. I lead our beverage category for emerging brands. I've been with Nielsen for about 6 years, spending most of that time with emerging brands, but then also 2 years on retail. So, really excited to talk to you today about some innovation and how to get on shelf.
Great. Just before we kick this off, this is how it's gonna work. So we are gonna start with Patrick talking about the snack category, and then we're gonna move to Jordan, and then we're gonna do for the beverage, and then we're gonna do a Q&A at the end. But feel free to drop your questions throughout the webinar in the Q&A section, just so we can, get like more organized and make sure that we see all the questions coming. So the Q&A, it's like a Q&A icon, little balloons lower here to your screen. But drop also in the chat if there is like anything else that you want to share with us. But let's try to keep all the questions there. Without further ado, Patrick, I'm gonna give the floor to you.
Jordan and I have the pleasure of talking to you guys today about the innovation landscape in snacking and beverage verticals and trying to figure out how to ensure that your product and consumer experiences match your consumers' expectations. And I think that's a big theme that we'll be discussing today is how do we start to measure that, or how do we start to look at that, because it is a big focus when we start to look at innovation. We'll also talk about some areas of disruption, like with functional beverages, and understand how consumers are using specific claims to inform their purchases on shelf. And most importantly, we'll be talking about how to integrate some of these insights into your business today. Innovation tends to be an area that can be difficult to measure, but after doing some polling, it is a top priority for many brands out there, with about 72% of FMCG innovators and marketers telling us it is one of their top three priorities this year. However, there is a bit of a gap when it comes to innovation measurement, as is reported to be the number one gap that brands have in their measurement. One of the best ways that we can start to measure innovation is to ensure that our consumers' product experiences matches their expectations. And the most important expectations aren't always necessarily uniform across categories. For snacking, purposeful innovation is king. Continuing to assess the changing consumer drivers is critical to maintaining and growing your share. On beverage, diving into the relevance of functional claims can help you best position the benefits your products has, which is of the utmost importance. But the one universal aspect that reigns supreme through this all is making sure that that product that you have out there is matching or exceeding your consumers' expectations. So what types of innovation are we able to do right now, or how can we start to measure that? One of the things that we've really started to notice, good value is obviously king, and not just in terms of your product being a good value, but where you focus some of that distribution. Value to the consumer is critical, and when we look at where shoppers have been turning during some of these inflationary times, the value channel of retailers definitely stands out and has been really hot over the last year, which dramatically outperforming its other channel counterparts. And making sure that your product is a good value and has a distribution strategy that meets consumers where they're going to find value, which is that value channel, is a recipe for success. Differentiation is another one, especially as we see many private label brands really upping their game in quality and innovation, which puts even more pressure on brands to differentiate themselves. And what you're innovating also matters. Aligning your product to winning subtypes, different attributes that you're innovating off of, has also been a very successful strategy over the last few years, where you can grab a hold of consumer shifting preferences and innovate where there is growth. Using attributes to effectively communicate your differentiation to your consumer and stand out, and using those attributes and claims is also a proven way to ensure successful innovation. Touching on the first call out from that last slide, we can start to identify where consumers are going to find that good value. In the value channel shopping, snackers are about 12% more likely to rank good value for the money as the most important purchase decision driver compared to other channels. And as you look to put your strategy for distribution together, taking a hard look at that value channel, which for those that aren't familiar with our definition of value channel, it's mass, club, dollar, retailers all together, are a spot where we're seeing considerable outperformance in innovative products as well as your regular products as unit volumes continue to fall across all other channels out there. So as we see where consumers are shopping, we can also focus on why the need for differentiation is so important. Private label has been on a tear lately, with SKU rationalization and the focus for many retailers over the last year being so heavily tilted towards private label. Many brands are facing more challenges than ever in trying to differentiate when up against private label, which is innovating faster than the rest of the market and growing faster than the rest of brands out there. I even attended a private label summit earlier this year where I heard a buyer pleading basically for brands to come to her with innovative ideas for private label, which is a huge shift from what many of us have seen in the past, where it was all just, hey, can you make it as cheap as possible? That focus on quality, that focus on innovation within private label has been big, which just puts that extra pressure on brands to really differentiate, and using differentiation as a key to growing your snacking brand. Innovation alone isn't necessarily enough, though. You have to innovate along a subtype that is ripe for innovation. And this is partially where we can start to measure some of these impacts. Innovation doesn't just mean creating new rod flavors or combos, although sometimes it can, for sure, but it can also mean identifying those areas of innovation that meet your consumers' needs and where there is growth potential, and that can differ a little bit by category. Here we're taking a look at two different categories, cookies and crackers, as an example. You can see that size is a subtype where manufacturers are growing both in total sales and in innovative sales. While in salty snacks, it's focusing more on variety, while novel combinations is actually an area that may have a lower likelihood of success over the last year. Using these different subtypes can really make sure that you're focusing on the right areas and you're innovating in the right things and not innovating for the sake of innovating. Find where that need is, find where that growth is. Some other areas to innovate and to know which aspects to call out and put on pack is also a key driver. Here's a key example. Last year, about 67% of consumers were trying to consume more protein. By looking at search trends, hashtags on Twitter, or doing your own survey work, you can uncover some of these overarching trends that you can see what your product aligns with or find new areas to innovate. When we also look at the hard numbers, they also prove the results in these instances, showing dramatic outperformance and growth for products that have a claim of having over 25 grams of protein per serving. However, having the wrong claim, just 20 to 25 grams more, not that it's wrong, but it's not growing nearly as fast as those claims that are over 25 grams of protein per serving. Ensuring that we're attuned to these different trends and innovate with the products that match consumers' expectations can have a large impact on some of these growth prospects. Better for you products over the last few years are another area that has dramatically outperformed in snacking. It actually declined last year for the first time in a while, where better for you was actually underperforming as those inflationary pressures were really, really strong. But as we're seeing inflation start to normalize or start to mediate a little bit, those better for you products that have that innovative differentiation are outperforming again. And over the last 4 years, regardless of what channel you look at, there is a consistent outperformance from a compound annual growth rate across all channels, where those better for products are definitely outperforming. And we have a unique way of measuring better for you products. It's not just better for your health, but better for the environment, better for society. And we can use a lot of our coding to be able to put that story together to help you really take a look at what are those better for brands doing as opposed to others. It's just another area that has been ripe with innovation over the last few years. Took a little dip of underperformance for a while as consumers became ultra price conscious, but is starting to level out and outperform again. And over that last 4 years, there's definitely outperformance there. One additional area that wasn't kind of covered on the previous slides, we kind of have where you should be looking to get some of that distribution. How do we start to identify some of those claims? How do we start to identify what areas there are ripe for innovation within a specific category? The timing of innovation can also be important, especially as it comes to snacks, confectionery. One of the areas that is really important is holiday collection, the seasonal items. Can be an area where it's, consumers are really looking for innovation specifically. And it can be a great way to release new innovations, expose to consumers to new innovative ideas, new innovative products. And we can see that special collection innovations make up about 41% of all total innovation dollars over the last year. This was especially true around Easter in March and April, and October around Halloween. And these can be great times to get some innovations out into the market and expose it to your consumers. With that, I'll pass it to Jordan to go over some beverage claims here.
I saw just yesterday at Walgreens, Oreo came out with a dirt cake flavor cookie. So I think that definitely falls into novelty, and I was very tempted to buy it. So definitely see why those characteristics are growing. So if you want to flip to the next slide, I'm going to get into, well, Patrick talked about some of the ways to innovate and some of the things that are really selling. I'm going to get into some of the claims specifically that are selling in the beverage industry. So first, I'm going to chat about what functional beverage is. Then I'm going to go about where there is growth in functional beverage. And then lastly, talk about how the consumers are actually shopping the shelf. And in a world where it feels like shelf space is constantly shrinking, where are we finding growth? So first, what is functional beverage? Functional beverage is essentially going to be any beverage with a positive claim or a testament. So some way of helping you. The biggest thing that's going to be left out of this category that some might think is included in there is going to be anything pop or soda related, depending on where you are in the US and what you want to call it. If you go to the next slide, I'll start getting into where there's some growth. So there's actually growth for both functional beverage and total ready to drink. In a lot of cases, functional beverage is actually just a subset of total ready to drink. And you're again seeing both with growth with both of them, but more growth within that functional beverage space, showing that if you add a claim to your product, we'll caveat depending on what that claim is, which we'll get into, is going to grow faster than the total ready to drink category. So you can see it pretty consistently is about 2% quicker. 2 years ago, functional bev was growing at 12%, whereas total ready to drink was growing at 10. And now if we look at latest 52 weeks, still seeing growth there at 7% for total ready to drink, and then 9% for functional bev. Go to the next one. Same thing for share. You can see that functional beverage dollar share is growing at 0.2 share points. So still seeing growth there, whereas functional beverage is growing at 0.7 share points. So currently functional beverage holds around 21% of the total ready to drink beverage dollar and unit sales. And we're predicting that will only continue to grow. So like Patrick mentioned, the claims matter on your product. So we know it's growing, but we know the entire category is growing, but what specifically is growing? When you're thinking about innovation or what your clients or what your competition's innovating, what are they looking at? And the data shows that we should be looking at metabolism support, obesity support, energy is continuing to grow, muscle health, brain health. I won't read through all of these, but I do want to call out that energy is a huge industry, which was probably no surprise to anyone, and it is continuing to grow, but there are other claims that are really popping up over the past year that are continuing to grow even quicker. So two of those that are a little smaller right now is going to be obesity support and metabolism support. So while they don't own a full $22 billion industry right now, they are making their way there with 82% growth and 95% growth respectively. So when thinking about what's growing, we're thinking where you might want to be innovating. Metabolism support and obesity support are huge. I know I can't turn on the TV without hearing an Ozempic commercial, and I'd say that goes hand in hand with these trends growing. It is such a conversation topic and definitely something that people are focused on. So we took all of those 10 attributes on the previous slide and really grouped them into 4 different themes. These 4 themes are going to be energy, and energy is going to include performance support, reduces fatigue, and of course, increases energy. The second is going to be weight. Weight includes muscle health, metabolism support, and obesity support. Preventative is going to include brain health, immune health, and digestive, which this one has been so interesting to watch over the past 3 years as we've really come out of the COVID era when preventative was absolutely booming. And then the 4th one is diabetes, which is just going to include diabetes support. So you can see here that energy and weight are on their way up, with energy, again, a $22 billion industry growing at 10%, which is huge. And then weight at 21% growth, also such incredible growth numbers compared to the total category. Then you look at preventative and diabetes, and those two are actually going down slightly. Preventative, again, makes sense to me as we come out of the COVID era and people just aren't buying. I know I personally am not stocking up on emergency like I used to, sits in the cupboard a little longer. And then diabetes is also on the way down a little bit. Moving into the next one. This slide, when I first looked at it, was a little bit confusing. So I'm going to take a step back and call out that we're looking at categories, but then we're also looking at attributes. So we have an energy category, an energy beverage category, but energy is also going to be an attribute. So as we move through the next couple of slides, keep those two in mind, and I'll try to call out which is which. So when we think about the category of energy beverages, we see that in functional beverage, energy is growing quite a bit, which is pretty stable, but some of our smaller categories are also seeing growth in functional beverage, such as kombucha and sparkling water, both growing quite a bit within functional. I think that really makes sense given that somebody shopping for a kombucha, for example, is generally looking for gut health, but sparkling water entering this space really was surprising to me. I don't know that I wouldn't have thought that the typical sparkling water drinker was looking for some functional beverages, but data shows that they definitely are. Next, we've seen that diabetes support is a proven claim with kombucha and sparkling water, which is very interesting because while it's growing in these two categories, we saw a few slides ago that it's actually declining overall. So when you're diving through the data, it's important to think about not only what attributes are doing well, but what attributes are doing well within a specific category. So brain health is another one that's down overall if you're looking at total functional beverage. But if you're zeroing in specifically on sparkling water, brain health is definitely a claim you want to be thinking about adding because it is growing so much quicker within that specific category, despite again being down overall. You can also see that mood and stress support is way, way up. So as people returned into normal lives, travel's up again. I know my stress personally has also been up, thinking about unpacking, repacking, unpacking, repacking. So that claim has also really been on the rise within sparkling water specifically. Moving into the next one, we can see that again, energy, which is a huge, huge industry, is continuing to grow dollar growth, both within the energy category, but then again, thinking of energy both as a category and as a claim, it's also continuing to drive growth outside of just the energy beverage category. So you can see that while yes, energy beverages are still growing as a category at 11%, we're seeing that energy claim also growing sparkling water, sports drinks, value add water, dairy-based drinks, and ready to drink chai tea. I know I was personally really surprised about the dairy-based drinks. I know when I think about going for a glass of milk, my first thought isn't, "Ooh, I'm going to be ready to run a mile after this," but really interesting to see that when consumers are shopping, they are looking for that boost of energy in pretty much any beverage that they are consuming. So huge growth, not only in the energy category, but also with energy as a claim. We'll move to the next slide. Sports drinks also grew for obesity support, and energy beverages were driven by metabolism support. So when we think about growing categories such as sports drinks and energy beverages, what's actually growing them? For sports drinks, it's going to be obesity support, and the claim obesity support helped to drive the categories sparkling juice, again, sports drinks, and energy beverages. And then on metabolism support, you can see that the claim metabolism support helped to drive energy beverages and water. So thinking to packaged tea and coffee, they have been two very stable categories over the past couple of years. Slight growth, slight decline. They've really been stable overall. So it's been really interesting to dive into where we've seen extreme growth within those. Within tea, which is going to be the one with the little tea kettle there first, you can see that inflammation health was a big driver of the tea category. So while it only grew at 2.2%, the tea brands that had the claim inflammation health actually grew at 18%. And then for the ones that said contain melatonin, we're seeing that growth at 64%, which again, the category is growing at 2.2%. So drastic increase in sales just by having those two claims. If we look at the coffee category, we're able to see that microbiome or category is growing at over 800%, which is wild. And then sleep support, which is shocking for coffee, is also growing at 23%. So just as like people are looking to get energy anywhere they can during the day, they're also looking for the best way to fall asleep at night after, both in tea and coffee, which generally you wouldn't think of as drivers to get additional sleep. And then next slide. So now we know what's growing, or more so what claims shoppers are looking to shop, but what's actually growing on shelf and how are shoppers shopping it? How are they making the decision on the shelf? What are some of the things on that product that they're actually looking for? So when we're thinking about what's actually growing in shelf space, so additional items being added to the shelf, which it can often feel as if it never happens. It feels like there's constantly shrinking shelf space. It's very motivating, at least for me, to see where items are being added. And the first one, hopefully to no surprise of anyone at this point, is going to be provides energy. So we can see that provides energy is up 10%, or has 10 items added to the shelf. Metabolism support has had 5 added. So if the claim is on the packaging saying provides energy or metabolism support, we're seeing increased items added. And then same for digestive health and obesity support at a little bit of a lower rate. But then on the flip side, if an item has brain health on it, we've actually seen the shelf losing 3 items rather than having them gained. I thought that the brain health one was an extremely interesting call out, because while brain health is down overall as a claim, it actually is up in certain categories. So going back to thinking, okay, you can look at total functional beverage, but when you get really specific into coffee, into tea, into kombucha, what's growing there, and looking at how claims affect your specific category. Next slide. So this is not only showing how are items being added to the shelf or removed from the shelf, but how are they actually performing on shelf? So what's their velocity? And I'm going to start with the negative here in the bottom corner of brain health. So you can see, one, it is getting removed from shelves. The shelf space for brain health products is shrinking. But then on top of that, when it is on shelf, it's moving slower. I will say though, again, it's not all doom and gloom for brain health, because depending on what category you're in, we are seeing growth in a couple of them for brain health. So it's definitely worth a deeper dive, and using your free Bizer reports, we can try to help you get a little bit deeper on that for your specific category. Then on the flip side of brain health, you can see metabolism support is, one, being added to the shelf, but 2, when it's on the shelf, it's moving incredibly quickly. And again, I'd say that really goes hand in hand with sort of the Ozempic craze. Everybody's looking to get back in shape, look their best and feel their best. So having a quicker metabolism there. So now we know what's growing, what claims are growing, in what categories they're growing, but how are shoppers actually shopping? What do they care about? And what we've seen that shoppers care about so much going into 2024 is transparency. Shoppers want to know what is in their products. So they want to see an entire list of ingredients. And not only see an entire list of ingredients, they want to understand what those ingredients are. So not have to stand there with their smartphone Googling 20 or 25 letter long words. They want to quickly be able to understand what's in what they're consuming. Next, they want a clear outline of nutrition details. This has been really interesting because we've seen this even in the BevAl space, where consumers are wanting to understand what's the nutritional makeup of their beverage alcohol items. So this is even expanding outside of functional beverage to categories that didn't traditionally report out details around what's in the product. But consumers, again, are screaming for transparency. Lastly, consumers care about sustainability. And this is not just our Gen Z shoppers. This is actually across the board. Shoppers want to know more and more about what's in their products. So looking into some of those claims around sustainability is also incredibly important. So when you're thinking about innovating, going back to some of the topics Patrick spoke to, what are some of the things that you should be thinking about, or some of the questions you should be asking? Are you constantly assessing assessing what the market needs and what's driving consumers. So are you thinking about the way they're shopping, that they're caring about transparency, that they're putting a focus on their health? Are you constantly evaluating that to see how it is changing, because it does change so rapidly? Next, are you ensuring that the product experience matches the consumer's expectations? Are you proactively renovating while building new innovation pipeline? So again, how shoppers are shopping is changing so quickly, and your products need to be evolving with them. Are you right-sizing your innovation pipeline? And are you exploring new technologies and emerging trends? So again, thinking back to brain health, the trend might be overall that brain health is down, but you can find specific categories in which it's up. So making sure that you're using the right tools and right data to make your decisions and drive your decisions. So as you're asking some of these innovation questions, such as what attributes should you have on your product? If you want to dive deeper into some of the topics that we went on today, what's your competition launching? We have a number of different NIQ tools and solutions that can help you. But in addition to that, just for being on this webinar, you get I believe it's 3 free Visor polls and a free Nielsen consultation, so that you can start to understand a little bit of the data we went through today, more specifically for your brand and your topic. So Patrick's going, if you don't mind going to the next slide, you can hold your phone up, scan this QR code to get some free data and set up your consultation so that you can really dive into it. And I would recommend being sure not to pull those reports until you do have a consultation, so that you can understand how you're using them, the benefit of the attributes you can look at, and make sure you're making the most of that data. So be sure to scan that. And then we're going to open up Q&A with some of the time we have left. So if you see the Q&A chat box at the bottom, you can put some of your questions in there.
I just want to say one quick thing, that I saw like brands asking if you have yogurt category or meat category. You guys have like tons of different categories. It's not just snack and beverage. So I just want to make this clear to everyone, that if you guys sign up, then you can choose inside of the platform what type of categories you're looking for.
Awesome. That's a great call out. Yes, definitely reach out and ask. I think our information's on the first slide, but also feel free to add us on LinkedIn, DM us, however's easiest to get in touch, and we can field your question to the appropriate group within Nielsen who specializes in the department that you're in. So yogurt, definitely, we can get you over to our dairy team. I see the question, how is ready to drink beverage defined? And the question was, is it any beverage that has no functional benefits? And this is a great question. The way it's ready to drink is defined is going to be essentially any beverage that is ready to drink. So you can crack it open and drink it on the road. I kind of think of this as, what would I throw in my bag on the way to work is going to be ready to drink. This includes functional beverage. So currently, when you think of the ready to drink category, it's a pretty big one. Functional beverage makes up 21% of that ready to drink category. So an item can both be a functional beverage and ready to drink based on the claims associated with it. So pop or soda, for example, would only fall into ready to drink. It wouldn't fall into that overlap between ready to drink and functional, because it doesn't have too many functional categories. I was going to say, the other question I see is, what do you define as size? And that's going to change from product to product and item to item. But what we do is what we call code I wish I had a product in front of me right now. Normally I do have some sort of beverage. What we do is we take an item and we code every word on the package. So it'll say the size on the packaging. A Nielsen team member, or at this point, I think it is a machine, is going through and typing into our database or coding the size of each item. And then depending on the category, we can create a unit that essentially unifies all the sizes, called EQ, or equivalized unit. So you can compare apples to apples regardless of what the size of the item is. So I'm not sure if that answered the question. If it didn't fully, feel free to reach out and I can go in more depth. Any data on superfood claims, which sizes do better? We have that data. I can't speak to it off the top of my head. Patrick, I'm not sure if you can, but if not, we can follow up with some information because we do have that information. I just don't have it memorized.
Yeah, we have a rules-based methodology to classify certain things as superfoods or other foods. So we can get you the official definition of what comprises of a superfood, IR definition.
We have a question called which is what are trends in electrolyte products for hydration? That's another one that they're definitely growing. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I think that would be a really good one to use your reports for coming to the webinar to see how that specific category is growing. Because not only is it growing, there's so much innovation there, from bringing back, I know when I was in college, Crystal Light was all the rage. You'd carry one of those Crystal Light squeeze packets everywhere you went with you. And now those are so back to add electrolytes to drinks. Powders are back for electrolytes. It's a really exciting space that's definitely growing.
When it says how much do NIQ innovation tests and tools cost, that can vary quite a bit, but we do have a lot of solutions for emerging brands that can start at a few $1,000s, on 5,000 to 7,000, I think is typically where those start, where we can do some concept testing. You can test your ideas against a history of other product launches, thousands of other product launches, where we've identified those key drivers that can predict solid performance for an innovative product, which is very, very respectable in the industry. It's it's a big unique thing that Nielson IQ can do that others can't, and it carries a lot of weight with buyers, investors, things like that, especially if it tests well too. So not only good for trying to figure out where to innovate, what concepts to move forward with, but also as a sales tool if you get it back as a positive result. And that's typically known as bases. If you ever spelled like basis, but BASES, bases is our innovation tools, where a lot of them sit in that bases umbrella.
I'd recommend too, outside of investment, let's say you heard that number and where you are as a brand, right? That's not a fit right now. I'd still recommend setting up a call to learn about these products, because you never know where your path or your brand's path will go. And it's always better to know about what's available to you and what your competition has access to, so that you're, again, at least aware what people are using. Another one we had is, do you drill down further to identify ingredients that support the claim? For example, which ingredients are trending to support immunity, sleep, etc.? And the answer is yes to that. We can get down to an ingredient level, trend out which ingredients are growing, and actually which ingredients not only are growing in sales, but which ingredients are growing in search. So are people searching melatonin, for example? Are people, I know I just recently was looking for a whole wheat bread. What are those? I don't know if that's quite an ingredient, but what are the ingredients that people are actually Googling for, on top of how much revenue is coming in from them? So we can get really deep on ingredients. We also can get down to a nutritional claim level. So how many grams of protein is in something? How much sodium? If it's on the package, there's a good chance that NIQ is tracking it. So at minimum, it's worth reaching out to see how we can help. The question is, which claim bucket do low sugar drinks fall into? That's one I'll have to check on. And I can't see the person who asked that question. So if you don't mind just shooting me an email or reach out to me on LinkedIn, either, I can follow up with the answer to that question.
We also have a question here in the chat. Do any reports detail why brand health categories are dwindling a bit?
I wish I had all this knowledge right in my brain, but I guess that's why we have all the data we're able to pull for it. I don't know top of mind why they're declining, but it's definitely something that we could look into to see, is it that what's the cause behind the shopping? Is it that people are being more conscious of their spending? Is it that they're spending their revenue elsewhere? We're able to look into all of that, but I don't know at top of mind.
Yeah, one of the unique features that we have too is we have the ability to poll shoppers as they're buying things. So that's something we could always look into doing if you're ever looking to figure out why someone's choosing something over another at the time of purchase. You can figure that out. We also have lots of different reports that can take a look at, people who used to buy brain health products, have they shifted to something else, or have they, is that consumer demographic shifting? There's a lot of different reports that we can build to kind of answer virtually any question you really have out there in the space. It's just a matter of us, and that's where you can talk to us. We can kind of guide you along what different areas we should be looking at to answer some of these questions for sure.
We have the question too, where do brands like Olipop and Poppy fall? And I love this question because it shows how the functional beverage space is constantly growing and changing. So at the time this data was pulled, those brands were considered soda. But that is something that we're actively evaluating because they do have so many functional benefits. So for the sake of today's conversation, they're soda, but something that is actively being reviewed. Such cool innovation and new things are coming out in this space all the time. It's so exciting.
Think that we answered all the questions. If anyone has any final questions and want to drop in the chat. Patrick, do you want to put your guys' email again? Just or if some people like want to reach out, or even LinkedIn and you guys mentioned.
It's just our names, first name dot last name at nielsoniq.com. Again, Jordan is in the beverage space. Anything center store, snacks, candy, baking, staples.
And if there's something else, still feel free to reach out and we'll get you to the right person.
Although one important distinction, Jordan owns coffee and tea. That's not in my wheelhouse, even though it's in the center of the store.
That's the beverage I do have in front of me right now.
And then also I drop here in the chat that we do, as mentioned before, we do have like a one-on-one meeting that you guys can do, and then 3 free reports for your category, and then weekly alerts about your category. So I dropped a link here. It was the same with the keyword code, but if that is easy or easier. So we have a few more questions. You want to go, Jordan, for it?
This one's for you, Patrick, actually. What category does the applesauce brands fall in?
I believe applesauce. We have applesauce categories, so we can break that out really easily. That would definitely be my wheelhouse. And then I think there was one, is beverage center store? Yeah, kind of. But it's the way it breaks down. So Jordan is anything that's beverage related, even if it is in the center store. But most of the other stuff, except maybe like household stuff that falls into a different area, everything else would be me typically. Are we able to see a list of brands included in every report? Yes. So this is something that you don't even, with the free aspect that you're getting with that QR code that you can go and visit, you'd be able to look up where anything is coded in the entire store. And again, we measure everything that you can find in a grocery store, virtually everything. The only thing is we really wouldn't be capturing clothing and things like that from a data perspective right now. But anything typically you can find in a grocery store will typically have a category for. And as part of that free Buyer access that we're offering, there's a tool in there that lets you search literally for any brand, and we'll tell you exactly where it's at in our hierarchy. We'll tell you some of the claims that are associated with it to be able to see that. And if not, we're always happy to provide it as well. If you have a question where something gets coded, where your own products are getting coded, let us know and we can send you a list of your own stuff so you can see where it's all at.
Is there a shot category, and is there a breakdown by function? I believe there is, and we could break it down by function. I don't think you would find that right in the Buyer platform. We would have to pull in our attributes tool, but those are answers we can get to. And then what's my name on LinkedIn? It should be just Jordan Moore. If you search company, it should be NIQ or Nielsen. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. It just got pinged in the chat too. From time to time, I'll reshare Nielsen's beverage insights. So I would recommend following both Patrick and I along, because we will regularly share thought leadership in our LinkedIn pages.
We show the verbiage or claims maybe impacting overall sales. Yes, definitely. And that's one of our biggest strengths at Nielson IQ is we definitely have the ability to drill down really deep into these different claims and see what their impact is. And one of the unique ways that we can do it is we have a difference between qualified claims and stated claims. So an example that I like to use that's going to be center store focus. So apologies if that's coming from a beverage person, but can take honey as a key example. Honey, most people know is gluten-free naturally, but we're able to take a look at what is gluten-free naturally and then products that actually call out honey on their package and what's the difference in performance. Even though they're all the same, there's no difference between the two honeys, the one that says gluten-free and the one that doesn't. We can see if stating that claim actually provided a lift. So we're able to do things like that, which I think is unique in our ability. So if you're debating whether to put a certain claim on pack and you want to see, if something's vegan, but it doesn't call it out on the package, does putting vegan on the package actually create lift? So not only can we differentiate between whether that claim is put on package, but you can also see, is vegan generally outperforming non-vegan or plant-based outperforming, or whatever claim you're looking to make. We definitely can do that pretty effectively. And there was a question about NIQ data subscription for emerging brands. Absolutely, there definitely is. And I think one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is flexibility, not only from a access standpoint, but from a cost standpoint. The QR code brings you to a free subscription of Buyer, which is the flagship tool that we have for our emerging brands. And that pricing is dictated or is based on how much volume you do out there in the marketplace. So that becomes much less expensive, rather actually inexpensive for brands that don't have as much volume, and then we kind of grow with you. We firmly believe in democratizing data, giving emerging brands the same tools and insights that the large brands use to tell their stories and grab their buyers' attention and hopefully facilitate growth. So yes, we have a lot of different options. And even if you have that one claim that somebody's, you got a buyer that's challenging you on every single time you go to a meeting and they're saying, hey, well, what about this? Can you prove this? We can do ad hoc reports too for very inexpensively if you need to. So we can definitely work with you. We want to work with you, and we'll make sure that we can put something together that works within your budget for sure.
Thank you. And also, I want to highlight that basically every week, Candace should drop some data we call data drops in our announcement channel. We also have like a library here in Notion, and this library also lives on the footer of every email we drop. So she used Nielson IQ to pull the data around like many different categories. And so if you go to this library, we have like tons of categories we have done before, but if you keep an eye on the announcement channels, you can always see like some data that she's posting about. And then also you can request her some type of category you want her to drop the data, but you can have an idea of looking in those data drops, also what type of data you can see from Nielson IQ page. I think that's a good way that you guys can just see like what we can collect from the platform. Great. Well, we don't have any more questions. Do you guys have any final words or?
The only thing I'd leave you with is one, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Patrick and I work specifically with emerging brands, and we're fully here to serve you. So you tell us what's helpful for you to learn, what resonated with you today, what you want to hear more of, less of. Every platform that we have and all the content that we put out is solely to serve you. So let us know what's helpful and versus what's less helpful.
Thank you guys for having us. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to getting to know some of you guys if you choose to reach out.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone to join us, and Patrick and Jordan for sharing your experience with us. Feel free to DM them or LinkedIn or email, and then also like check the data drop. So I think that you guys can have an idea of what you can get. So thank you so much. See you guys soon.